Hi everybody, it's Andrea over at Sewspire.com, and I am here with the third video in our ongoing Presslock series. Today I am going to be showing you how to make this handy journal / notebook organizer. This one I made a couple months ago and I've been using it every day. And I incorporated a snap closure on it, but today I'm going to show you how to incorporate the press lock closure. You, of course, have the option of using a snap if that's your preference. So on the inside of this organizer, we have two deep pockets, and then there is a center pen or pencil slip there, which is actually two pieces of coordinating fold over elastic, and the individual pockets close with the hook and loop tape. But you could put press locks there if you really wanted to, or you could do snaps as well. And each of the pockets is designed to fit the hardbound moleskin journals, which measure 7 3/4 inches wide by approximately 10 inches in height. So 7 3/4 by 10. So I keep the hardbound journal in one pocket, and then in the opposite pocket I have 3 of the soft, smaller moleskin journals. So it's a very versatile organizer. You, of course, could put your iPad in there or your e-reader, documents, things like that. And then hopefully you've been watching the channel long enough that after I show you how to construct this, you will be able to custom size it to fit your contents. So this is what we will be making today in this video. I am going to give you the pattern measurements as we go along, and then in addition to that, I have created a supplemental one-page PDF document that has all the pattern measurements, has the finished measurements of the organizer, as well as your supply list. And then there is a photo of the project and hyperlinks to this very tutorial so that you can save this document on your computer and then access everything that you need on that one-page document. You would just click right through to the tutorial and there's no searching for you. I designed these specification sheets to serve as a source of inspiration to future you. All right, so you can save those, download those, print those, collect those, and those are available for a nominal fee in my Etsy pattern shop. Every purchase directly supports this channel so I can keep buying material and supplies and maintain the equipment needed for the free weekly tutorials. So I thank everyone who has purchased and will be purchasing the design specification sheets for this project. So shall we get started? Alrighty, so I want to give you the lay of the land here and show you what has already been prepped. You are going to need 4 pieces of quilt weight cotton, which measure 12 inches high by 18 inches wide. 2 of those will be the interior and exterior body panels, and 2 of those will be used to fashion the pockets, which you're just going to press those 2 in half so you have a piece of material that's 12 inches tall by 9 inches wide, and we will be working with that momentarily. Then you are going to have a flap closure, which is 4 inches wide by 12 inches long, and you will fold that in half so you get a piece of material that is 4 by 6, and you're going to back that with a like-sized piece of the Annie's Soft and Stable. You can substitute with fusible fleece, quilt batting, something with a similar weight. My preference though is the Annie's. I really love sewing with that foam. It's fabulous. Okay, the flap closures, you're going to have 2 of those, and they measure 6.5 inches across by 12 inches long. So it is 1 cut of material here, which you're going to press in half so that you have a 6.5 inch by 6 inch piece of material, and you're going to back that with a like-sized piece of the Annie's Soft and Stable. So I pre-crafted the flap and the pocket, and I have that in position on my interior body panel, which is also backed with the Annie's Soft and Stable. So when we get to the point that we're attaching this second pocket, I will catch you up to speed on this first pocket. But the process for crafting the pocket and the flap are identical. So we're just going to make one set together. So you have your flap pressed in half and backed with Annie's. So now we want to stitch down the sides and across the base. We're going to leave the top open to turn, and you can go ahead and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance for this. And then you're going to want to trim away the excess there. You'll be turning this flap right side out, poking out those corners and pressing this well. Okay, once you have your flap turned right side out and pressed, then you're going to top stitch around the finished edges. And I just aligned the right hand edge of the presser foot up with the edge of the flap. And then you should have a finished flap, and you'll need 2 of those flaps. Then we are going to be attaching the rough side of a coordinating piece of hook and loop tape to this flap. You'll need approximately 5 inches of the hook and loop tape for each flap, and you will position that a 1/4 inch up from the top stitching. And there is a very skinny end of the hook and loop tape that does not have any hooks on it. You want to try to stitch right on that hook free area. Otherwise, with the hook portion of this, it tends to catch the thread and the thread breaks. So try to stay right on that skinny edge. You're not going to stitch the sides down because, again, you will catch the thread and the thread will end up breaking. Okay, so I have my hook and loop tape attached, the hook side to the flap, and that's what that looks like. And you'll have 2 flaps. Now I want to get to work on the pocket. So again, the pocket is the same size as the body panels, 18 by 12. You're going to press that in half, right sides facing, stitch across the top short edge and down that open side. Leave the base unstitched to turn, and you can use 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then you're going to want to turn this pocket right side out, poke out those corners well, and give this a good press. And you should have a nicely finished pocket. This top finished edge is the top of the pocket, so just run a row of top stitching across there. And then you're going to take the soft side of your hook and loop tape and center that about a 1/4 inch below the top stitching on this pocket. And so I just press in center lines and eyeball that, and you can go ahead and pin this in place if it's easier for you. Again, you have a very skinny ledge in which to stitch on, so just stitch across the top and the bottom of this tape. Okay, so here I have my interior body panel, which is 18 by 12 and backed with a like-sized piece of the Annie's. On the right hand side, I have positioned my first pocket 1.5 inches from the top of that, and you will be lining up your sides, but there will be a little overhang on the base, and that is just to ensure that the pocket doesn't shift and you capture all of the layers in your stitch line. Because once we stitch around this, it has been my experience that even when you seam rip or adjust or trim, once that process is underway and if there's not any give here, it's very hard to rectify any mistakes. So I personally think it's easier to have overhang, know it's in the stitch, and then trim it up. And the way that my cuts worked out, this was very practical to cut 4 like-sized pieces of material. So 1.5 inches from the top, sides align, a little bit of overhang at the base. Then bring over your flap and go ahead and position that right on top of that, so that the flap is now attached to the pocket, and you can pin this pocket in place so it doesn't shift. You have the option of pinning the flap in place at the top here too, so that that doesn't shift. Now I'm going to use a little bit different technique to finish this cover nicely, because I want all of the edges nice and even. So I want to be able to stitch all the way around the edges. So what I am going to have you do is lift up this first pocket here, and you're going to cut a 5-inch slit in the bottom of this interior panel, and that's how we're going to birth this project. And then we will press and patch this little hole here, which will be covered up by the pocket and will not be visible to anyone, but it will result in really nice clean edges. So just to review, measure up 2 inches from the base and in 1.5 inches, and then cut yourself a 5-inch slit using your rotary cutter and your ruler. All right, you have the option to interface this little area where you will be cutting, interface the fabric with a little lightweight fusible if you are concerned about fraying. We will use the same lightweight fusible to patch that little slit on this front side, which no one will see. So you're going to need a smidgen of fusible interfacing for the rest of this process. So go ahead and get your slit. It goes through the fabric, through the foam, all right? On the right hand side towards the bottom of that pocket. And then the next thing that we need to do before we can create our sandwich and sew around the edges is craft this little flap closure, which I explained. You folded the fabric in half, and now you have 4 by 6 backed with Annie's. Use the 1/4 inch seam allowance to stitch around the sides and the base. Leave the top open so you can turn. And we will do the same thing as the flaps. We will turn this around, poke out the corners, press it, and top stitch. I do like to trim away the excess on this flap, and then I angle those corners just a bit to reduce the bulk there, and they tend to press very nicely. as a result. So now I have my cute little flap closure. I'm going to top stitch around the finished edges, just lining up the edge of the presser foot with the edge of the fabric. And now I have a finished flap. I am not going to install my press lock until I get this project turned around, just so I don't have to try to pull that lock through that hole and have it get snagged on anything. Okay, so at this point we have the interior body panel with the slit cut in the right hand side. We position the pockets on that towards the edge. We have our flap that we just crafted here, which we want to center on this. And same thing, go ahead and have about an inch overhang on that flap as well. And you can pin that to all the layers. And that should be approximately 4 1/4 inches from the top and from the base. And then we have our 2 flaps in place. Now we want to take our remaining panel, which is 12 by 18 and is not interfaced, and position that right sides facing on top of the interior. And then I like to look inside there, grab those pins, and bring as many of them as I can to the outside, because then I don't have to go fishing for them when I'm trying to turn this around. I may still end up with 1 or 2 in there to hold that pocket nice and flat, but I do try to get the majority of them out. All right, so try your best to make sure the corners of your body panels are aligned, and then it is safe for you to stitch all the way around the edge of this exterior panel using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, I have stitched all the way around the perimeter of this. Now I'm going to remove the exterior pins and verify that in fact I have captured the layers on the back as well. And then I can go ahead and trim this up to 1/4 inch. And you can see how convenient it is to have plenty of overhang. So there's just absolutely no question in your mind if you captured all of the layers in the seam. And again, when I was cutting the fabric, those flaps, that was the leftover from it. So I just minimized my cuts and then maximized my folds when designing this. If you are short on fabric, you can certainly conserve and not have the overhang, but you will want to add extra pins or clips to ensure that you capture everything in the seam. Okay, so I have this trimmed up nice and neat. Now I want to try to identify where those pins are so that I can reach in there and get the pins out first, so I can see them from the back side here. And I don't think I have any more in there, but I will be careful. So I'm going to reach in as far as I can to the opposite side there and try and squish everything out and get that opposite side through this hole first. You just want to go slow and turn out as much of the fabric as you can to minimize how much is coming through that opening at any one time, because you don't want to accidentally rip the fabric. That's the benefit if you add a little bit of interfacing to that cotton fabric, just something very thin where you cut. It does help stabilize that fabric. So right now it looks like everything's inside out on this side, and here is the cut where I just turn that all around, and we're not going to close that up quite yet. I want to go ahead and flip these pockets and flaps around to the right side there. And you'll note we did not stitch down those pockets on the inside. I'm sure if this is your first time watching, you were wondering, whoa, 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 what about that pocket on the inside? That is on purpose so that we can turn that all around. So now what I like to do is unattach the flaps there, smooth everything out nice with my hand, and then give this a super duper steam press so that it is restored to its original luster. And I'm going to press that on the front and the back. Okay, so now I have a product that is finished around all four sides. I have my flap here for my closure, and then I have my two flaps at the top for my pockets, which are still open, and I still have the little slit here in the bottom. We are not going to yet attach the pockets because I want to be able to install this press lock so that the hardware is in between the exterior and that foam so that it doesn't scratch the contents of the pocket. So this is what a press lock looks like, and I get mine at the Hobby Lobby. It's a Sewology brand, full price. They're $2.29. If you shop their sale, you can save a little bit of money when the hardware is marked down. So on the back of this is a big oval plate, and there are two very sharp prongs on that. Nice base plate there, and then you will need to depress the lock to separate the oval locking plate. And then on the back of the lock is a brad, which you will lift up those prongs and remove that brad to install. And then you can separate the top of that lock a bit, not too much, but you want to get that open enough that we're going to be able to install that on the flap at center. So go ahead and position the lock at center on the flap, and then press down on that so that it stays in place. And this antique bronze looks absolutely gorgeous with this green material. So pretty. Okay, and then you're going to take the sharp end of this locking plate and you're going to poke that through the fabric, through all the layers out through the back side. And then you should be able to fit the brad right through there. You could put a dab of your glue on there if you like, or your fray check. I haven't had any problems with it, but I could certainly see how a little dab of glue right there would be really useful. So the brad goes through the front, and then that just folds over on the back there, and your press is installed at center on the flap. Easy peasy. Then you want to close up your flaps here and fold over the organizer. Align those corners nice. Sometimes it's helpful to clip those just so they don't shift, because once you pierce the fabric, there's really no going back. So you don't want to accidentally install the lock crooked, and then when it's closed, your fabric is wonky. So go ahead and bring over the lock. I like to leave room for the contents to expand. So there's about an inch of a loop there. You see that? With the flap, so that the contents can consume that. If you are going to be storing minimal contents, you could come way in, but I like to leave a little room for growth, and I do use the nicer journals, so I will consume this excess here. So I'm going to position the flap, then I'm going to go ahead and slide the lock on the press, and I have these sharp prongs here exposed, and I'm just going to pierce that top fabric so that I have 2 little holes there, and I know about where that should go in. And I want to get inside of here. I'm going to put one hand inside of here and turn this over so that my hand is able to receive this press lock as it comes through. Careful not to poke your fingers. And the short side of that plate should be close to the edge. And so you want to carefully poke those prongs through there. They are very sharp. And then you are going to need to pull this just a little bit towards you so you can see those prongs and get that plate positioned on there. If you try to do this all before we close this up, there's a good chance that your lock or press would not be positioned correctly. So this is a foolproof way to do this, although you will have to iron again because we're wrinkling up the fabric. And again, the other benefit of this is that internal plate is not on the inside of your pocket, so it won't scratch up your contents. Okay, so now I'm going to smooth everything back out, close down my flaps, do a little test fit here, and voila, perfect installation of that press lock. It's so pretty. Okay, I definitely need to press again, so I'm going to do that. All right, so now everything is pressed again. Now that I have the press lock in place, I am ready to repair the little hole that I put in this pocket. So on the right hand side, I'm going to open that up so that I can see where that little hole is, and then I'm going to cut a strip of this lightweight interfacing. It's like Pellon 808 or 809. It's SF 101 might work good as well. So I just need a little rectangle of that, and I'm going to put that right over where I made that cut and tuck it in so that it's not visible. And I'm going to press really well. And then after you have pressed, just peek in there and make sure it did adhere, and mine looks good. Then we are going to confirm everything is even and the pockets are laying flat. We want to take 3 inches of 1 inch fold over elastic, which is available in lots of fun colors. You could use regular 1 inch elastic as well if you wanted. If you wanted to jazz up your just plain old white elastic, you could sew little coordinating fabric scrunchy covers for them. But that might start to get a little bulky. So whenever possible, try to use the colored fold over elastic. You'll need 2 pieces, which are 3 inches wide. And you are going to position those pretty side up towards the bottom of this center channel here. And you'll be tucking those raw edges of elastic underneath these pockets so they're hidden. And then you can lay your pen of choice on top of that to make sure that it's going to capture that nice, and you can adjust as needed. And then once you are happy with the placement of your elastic, which if we're measuring from the bottom of the elastic, it'll be up 1.5 inches and 4 inches. Just as long as it holds your writing implements, that's all that matters. Okay, so the next step for us is to stitch right along the edge of each of these pockets all the way to the top. You want to be certain that you catch that elastic in your stitch, and I recommend that you back stitch when you get to that elastic. I like to work on this side so that I can see what I'm stitching versus trying to turn that over and stitch on the exterior. So I'm going to begin on the right hand side here, and I'm going to start at the top of the planner, but so I know that when I come down I will capture that pocket in my stitching. And voila! I have an adorable Presslock organizer here with the little spine on the side. The hardware really makes this look regal. And then you have 2 envelope pockets on each side, and the contents are protected from that hardware there. Before we say goodbye, I just want to give you the finished measurements on this. So height-wise, 11 inches, and then when it is closed and even there, it's about 8 inches across. So 11 by 8, and then your depth here is a little less than 2 inches. So you have plenty of room to fill up your pockets, and then a nice little handy pen slip here that will hold multiple pens, and then we can fold that right over and close it up, and off we go. So I hope you enjoyed this project. I would love to know what you are going to use your organizer for. If you'll drop that down in the comments and inspire us all, that would be awesome. I will be off next week for a little staycation. I'm going to be tidying up and organizing the studio. If time permits, I may share some Sewspire behind the scenes studio footage with you. So please do follow Sewspire on Instagram and Facebook. And then if you make one of these great organizers, please post pictures to the Sewspire Facebook group page. You'll find links to all my social media and more down in the notes. So be sure to check that out. And I will see you 2 weeks from today. So until then, as always, please know the creative genius in me will be celebrating the creative genius in you. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have an awesome week.